So this section is basically about dynamic exercises. It's linked in for falls prevention. So dynamic exercises are any exercise or movement that's moving. I know that's a double up in terminology, but we want to work something called dynamic balance, which is moving balance. So the link up point for it from a chair-based exercise program into a falls prevention program would be at sit to stand. I've angled off the chair here and everything else so you can see what's going on. But generally, if you're working in a care environment, you'd have this chair pushed up against the wall. It acts like a safety blanket for when you're working with older people. If they fall, they've got a safe sort of landing spot to fall into. So sit to stand, hands on the chair, controlled movement coming up, controlled lowering, is a dynamic movement. It's working dynamic balance, it's also working leg strength, and that's a core component of being able to mobilise safely. So if you've worked in care environments, I don't know if you've ever had, when you've been walking someone, literally you've seen their legs go down behind, underneath them, like an elevator going down. And that's what we're trying to stop, with your basic leg strength. Then what we're going to do is, I've got a chair here, but equally that could be a Zimmer frame or walking frame of some sort. If you're using the old triangle frames, make sure the brakes are on the handles. They need something stable in front of them to make sure it doesn't shift out as they're working. So if I come on up, I'll put my chair in front of me. It allows me a support in front. So I'm going to look at some movements, not in any particular order, but to give you a gist of the type of movements you can do. You can strap them together into a class. So literally I'm going to start from the top of my head and work my way down. Simplest movement, believe it or not, is to look behind and look behind. If you try that yourself, you'll feel as you look, your weight shifts onto one leg, and as you look the other way, your weight shifts onto the other. So literally I'm moving my centre of balance from side to side. Then another one of my favourites is a swimming movement, and it's basically stolen out of Tai Chi, Qigong. So we're coming back and forth. Again, as I come across now, my weight's onto this side, I bring the hand through, my weight goes onto the other side. Then what we've got is the reverse, going back. So now my weight is shifting through onto the heels of my feet as I move through the movement. Then we've got maybe coming to the side. So again, it's all very Tai Chi, Qigong-ish. If you don't want to do the hands as I'm showing them, you simply get someone to reach slightly to one side, slightly to the other, slightly to one side, slightly to the other. You'll see the weight shift in my legs as I do it. Weight's going onto one leg, going onto the other. Another one of my personal favourites is a stirring of the pot. So again, if I remember right, that is from Qigong. It's a breathing exercise, but it's also a weight shift around the other way. So at this point, my feet are still flat on the floor. And I'm feeling the weight shifting through the soles of my feet from one side to the other. Hands coming up, hands coming down. Hands coming up, hands coming down. And I feel a slight shift into the back of my heels, and as I come down, more into the mid-foot. Then we can go on and put the chair out slightly. I'm angling off so you guys can see more away from the chair. The classic sort of falls prevention exercise is a leg swing. Now if I'm in a care home environment and there's bars in the hallway, I'd probably take someone out on the bars if I've assessed them to be safe enough. I can use the bar and then bring a chair out there and allow them to sit down. The bars tend to be strapped into the walls fairly strongly, so it acts like almost like a ballet bar for me. Then we could go to the other side. And then if we move that on slightly, you end up with this idea of a step with a heel drop onto the weight and stepping back and heel drop on and step back and heel drop on. And I could do the other side, maybe turning the person around, but I've worked with people with strokes, and sometimes, more often than not, someone with a stroke will have one arm better than the other. So I tend to keep them on here. You don't have to rotate them and bring the other arm around to hold on to. So I've still got this heel drop and step through, heel drop and step through, heel drop. Then we can move it on even further. So one of the basic sort of strengthening exercises would be up onto tiptoes and down. So if I bring the chair to the side, we've got up onto tiptoes and down. Obviously you'd leave the chair in front of the person. If I want to move that on even further, I bring them here and I get them to step, 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 step. The goal of it in the end is to have them to be able to walk on tiptoes. Obviously with you behind them or near them to make sure they don't fall over, but it's challenging the person's balance. Another version of that would be heel walking. And again, the goal is to have the person to walk onto their heels. And I would do that along a bar. So I'd start off with a fairly safe environment using the chair, progress that up to a few steps forward and back, then onto a bar, have them walking along the bar with a safety hand on the bar, probably me walking behind them. And then when I was a little bit happier, I give them a little bit more leeway with just a hand there. I can react if they're going to fall, but I can allow them to build confidence with it. Another movement we've got is more of a dynamic step and step, step and step. So where that starts is just a simple step out from the side of this chair that becomes progressively more dynamic and a larger movement. Then we've got some other sort of basic movements. So something here which is more functional is a hands-on, a touch and come on up, and a hands-on, a touch and come on up. If the person's got problems with their blood pressure, you can be a little bit more wary of that type of movement. But I've run that in care homes for 20 years, had no problems at all with it. So I know I'm going to get feedback and people saying it's quite a risky movement. In reality, it really isn't. It allows the person the skills to pick stuff up from the floor without falling over. Then we've got a figure 8 movement. So you classically see that set up into a lounge area or some sort of open space like a restaurant area with a chair, 2 chairs, and you literally figure 8 in and out of the chairs. And what that allows you to do is the person has to turn on the circle and bring themselves back round. So I've given you sort of a fair wallop of different movements and exercises you can do to work balance. And what I'd say is if you look into the manual, there's more. But they're the main sort of players, and the real sort of secret about who you use and who gets to do what exercise at what level is down to your risk assessment. There's something called the RJO Gallery, RJO Mobility Gallery, and that's worth looking up. And in the RJO Gallery, there's basically 5 levels of mobility. At the very top end would be the type of people you see walking around a care home independently. Next down would be someone walking on with a frame. Next down would be someone who can weight bear but can't really walk any distance. Next after that would be someone's wheelchair bound. Next after that would be someone who's basically at end of life care. And really your falls prevention and dynamic work is linked in with the first 2. Occasionally you can get someone who's in that middle group that can weight bear, that you can bring back up, but really, in all honesty, that's the realm of the physios. So what we've got is a basic structure or routine you can put together from those elements. I hope that's helpful, and if you come on the course I'll make it a lot more clearer as we go through. So these are just a couple of other little variations you can do. Where I did stir in the pot, I also used to do quite a lot, was just that simple movement here. And as you can see, as I come round, it has the same effect as stirring, but the range of movement's a little bit larger, which arguably can make it a little bit more different. So here the arms are just relaxed, weight is shifting. Another one of my favourite ones was, especially with people that had a stroke as well, was writing. So I'd get them to write out a word with their foot, and then of course get them to do it with the other leg. So if I do leg, in joint up writing, and leg, in joint up writing. The joy of it is actually finding words that are rather off the cuff. So you pick a theme and then you run on the theme: football clubs, holiday destinations, cities in the UK, sites around Wales, sites around Glasgow, businesses, whatever you want to pick. But you run on the theme and they have to spell out that word. So what the real secret of all the dynamic exercises is adaptation, and getting the right level of adaptation for the right person, and really working in a care environment. That comes from knowing the people you're working with, and if you know anything about care environments, you'll know about care plans. So in a care plan, you're going to find the movement and handling plan in there. And you've got your falls risk assessment as well. And you tie those 2 elements together with the person you see. So no matter what those plans say, you need to do an informal risk assessment on the day. Anything where you're moving people literally up on their toes, on their heels, or got them moving from side to side in a lateral movement, is a slightly more advanced movement. Anything where they're sort of attached to the chair and moving near that chair with a solid grip on it or frame is a sort of intermediate beginner movement. So I just want to add that little bit on, and I hope that's helpful.